Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
Bippity boop.
Bippity boop.
Yep. Scoopity doop. Shibbity whoop.
Your Ben Possible Kindle Matlock. Kindling, I guess it is. Not Kindle. Kindle's a book e-reader.
Yeah. Or this show brought to you by Kindle. Get the e-reader.
Why not? I like it. I use mine. I'll endorse it if they'll give me a free upgrade because mine's like 10 years old now.
I use mine. I still prefer the feel of a real book, but I vastly prefer not reading. Is what I've learned, and that's where this show comes in. You don't have to read shit.
Yeah, it's all
because
I have to read shit. We did the
part.
Yeah.
But we only have to do it every other week, so.
We're on like episode 235, I think, right around there.
I don't know.
And,
I just corrected you on this, and now I've forgotten.
Yeah. I never know till I go to save the file. I just look at what the last file was called. But 230 some episodes, and not one single thank you from somebody saying, thank you for making it so I don't have to read. So
that would be funny. Like YouTubers and stuff, like
that'd be like the weirdest like compliment.
Like YouTubers and stuff are like they'll get those like fan responses and shit like, hey, just wanted to say I've been going through a really tough time and the work you do really cheers me up. And like if we got that, but it's all just a bunch of proud illiterates, it's like thank you so much. I've always
wanted to learn about this topic, but I can't read. So
you know what? Wikipedia is just the fucking worst. Thank you for skimming it.
I don't know. That'd be the one thing that could make me a proud American.
I'll take it.
Yeah.
I always thought we were doing a service. I just didn't
know
realize
what the service
to who.
was. Yeah, right. I like to still, and we've talked about this before, I like to think that there's a kid out there, at least one, that's written a school report based on one of our episodes, because we're so like not thorough in our investigation.
If they were anything like me, they included all the F-bombs.
Yeah.
And like argued with the teacher, like, it's just a word, fuck.
Henry fucking Taft did.
You're such a fucking baby about this. Fine, I'm going to the principal's office. Fuck you.
And we get the angry letter from the mom. My kid listened to your show and got in trouble at school.
I'll be like, ma'am,
I would love that one because I'd have so much fun responding to it.
I'll be like, ma'am, have you listened to the show? That's not your fault.
Anyway.
And then I would try to hit on her.
Yeah, well, it depends.
You should listen to the show. Because my sultry voice will serenade you with yokai.
Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast.
What's up, all you fine, foxy lady? Welcome to Yokai Watch.
I like that one better. Yeah.
On this show, we hit on your moms. I guess that's a new thing. But usually,
hey, we need a new angle. I'll take it.
But actually, we tell each other stories, and they can be about anything, or they can be about the same thing. If Steve's Twitter is any indication.
Yeah. We've talked about it before, and fortunately, I mean, this one could have been a lot worse, but my usual mode of operation is about the same as yours. Like maybe a few days before the show, I'll start to think, look around for possible topics, and then I'll find one and be like, yeah, I should be able to work that one up. But I still don't usually start working on it until the day of the show, which is really bad right now because we've been so fucking busy at work, just for months. And I knew I had at least one scheduled meeting and one person that I knew would come in at some random time during the day. So I knew it was going to be a busy day. But anyway, I was like, but I've got this topic that I like. But I thought before I did it that I would double check. And sure enough, it's one that you've covered before, kind of. But at least it was before I did all the notes and worked up a show. And when I say kind of, I was looking at the King's Tavern in Mississippi, which is a supposed haunted place, but it's got some real history behind it. Mm-hmm. But one of the parts that makes people think it's haunted was it was kind of the killing grounds for the Harp brothers, which were are considered like one of the first like American serial killers like duo, and that's what you've covered them before. I don't know that you touched too much on the tavern itself. The problem is that's a major part of the story of the haunting of the tavern. And
I mean, for what it's worth, I don't remember doing it at all.
It was a very early episode. It was after we, like, 'cause when we started, we used to both, do a topic each week, and we realized that's fucking insane. That's way too much work. So it was after we like had decided not to do that, but it had to be within the first couple months of us like doing individual shows. So I did not cover that. And then I was like, well, fuck it. Creepypasta. But I really didn't want to. So I didn't. I found a topic. I've got a topic. And I managed to find just enough time to put it together. But this is one that I'm surprised that we haven't covered. It's extremely in the wheelhouse of the show. And it's somebody that you may be... Whoops, I just kicked my guitar and it's ringing in my ears. Which is fun to point out because it won't come through on the recording. That's not how my audio is set up. But anyway, let me describe it.
Recording.
It was a like that. So anyway, this is squarely in the wheelhouse, and you may be familiar with the person, but I'll just get to it. So on February 11th of 1860, a man named Karl Denke was born in the hilariously named town of Oberkenzendorf, probably Oberkenzendorf, which is, of course, most of us already know this, but it's northeast of Munsterberg, Silesia.
Sounds like some shit if you're trying to like copy like Lord of the Rings locations.
Yeah, right. But you're like me, and you're not very. It's very much like a name I would come up with for a character in an RPG, where you're like, oh, something kind of cool and high, like Middle Earth sounding. Oberkenzendorf.
The dwarves of Bucky Borfton, like.
Right. Which all this was in the Kingdom of Prussia. Not much is known about his childhood, so this is going to be a good story. But the few accounts that are out there about him as a child just said that he was quiet and soft-spoken and difficult to raise, which is interesting to me because as a parent of two kids, quiet and soft-spoken sounds fucking wonderful. Like,
my brother is quiet and soft-spoken, and it's a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
Because that is... an entire upbringing of someone shrugging at you. And fuck, it's annoying.
Yeah. So Karl ran away from home at the ripe old age of 12 and eventually got a job as an apprentice to a gardener. In the mid-1880s, at the age of 25, Karl's father passed away and left him some money. His older brother got the home, and he got money, and I think he got the better deal, which is weird, because he ran away from home. But again, as a parent, I could almost see that, be like, thank you. Mm-hmm. Here's your reward for not making me raise you all the time.
I don't know. I don't know how I'd land on that, because technically you get, like, a house or some shit. That's a pretty, that could turn into a pretty good investment. That pays you off big.
It must have been... It doesn't say how much money, but it was a decent chunk of money. It was enough to, he used it to buy a plot of land and take up farming. It did not go well, and Denke was forced to sell the farm and move into a house in town. However, due to inflation, Denke was soon forced to sell the house. But he refused to completely leave, however, and instead moved into the small apartment that sat adjacent to the property. So when he sold the farm, he bought a house that had two houses on the plot. So it's weird because, and I thought I was thinking about this in an unrelated note. Like at the time, it seemed like you could come into money and buy a whole estate, but there was no such thing as banks and savings. So you were only as good as however much money you were making at that exact moment. Or something. I probably didn't word my thoughts right there because my thoughts aren't that strong anyway. But anyway, the point is there was an apartment and a house that he owned. And when he had to sell it, he said, oh, I'm living in this apartment. And he refused to leave. But any time that life knocked Dinky down, he got back up again, because you ain't never going to keep him down. The new owners apparently didn't mind letting Dinky stay on.
And he just pissing the night away.
Right. He managed to open and operate a small butcher shop in town, which sold mostly leather goods such as belts and suspenders and that kind of stuff. But he was well liked by the people and even active in his church, serving as a cross bearer and, somewhat ironically, as it turns out, an organist. Dinky had a license to sell pork products in the city, and due to the post-war need for belts and suspenders and pork products, he made a decent enough living. He even became pretty well known for his jarred pickled skinless pork.
I love the idea of a post-war need for suspenders. It's like, okay,
right?
Oh yeah, I need to snap some bitches as I'm walking around town.
How do I look like a dandy now? All the soldiers took our suspenders.
That's awesome. And it's not, I want them, I need them.
Right.
It's society will not
That was
recover.
a niche that was waiting to be filled by a Karl Denke.
We need to fucking differentiate ourselves from all the men we freed.
The suspenderless plebes. But yeah, and he sold jarred pickled skinless pork, which many described as being gut, which is German for good. I can imagine what how good of a salesman he must have been to become well known and liked for jarred pickled skinless pork.
Jarred pickled bland tasteless pork by Gordon Ramsay.
And I think Oscar Mayer makes that now, but
yeah, it's as fish bait, but
yeah, but post-war it becomes a delicacy.
Yeah.
But things didn't stay all sunshine, rainbows, church, and pig organs for Karl Denke. So on December 21st, 1924, a homeless man by the name of Vincent Olivier, I think it's pronounced. It looks like Oliver with an I in it, but I think it's Olivier.
Yeah.
Showed up at the police station in Munsterberg. He was covered in Monsterberg. Yeah, it's where Hotel Transylvania.
Welcome to Monsterberg. What can I get you?
Mm-hmm. He was covered in blood, and he came to report that the man that many people knew as Vader Dinke, or Father Dinke, had attacked him with an axe in his apartment. And a probably more trustworthy account says like a pickaxe, not like a wood axe, which makes it cooler in my book.
Oh man, imagine getting killed by a guy named Dinky.
You got dinky doinked.
I got dinked off. Fuck.
And so, this bleeding homeless man comes in and says, this well-liked pillar of your community attacked me with an axe. And they were all like, "What nove? We love Vader Dinke." Or however Munsterbergian police talked back then. So, and this happened, there's still places today like this, but at the time, in the area of Munsterberg, homelessness was illegal, which is fun. It's this thing that you hate being and is completely out of your control. Well, fuck that. That's a crime.
Yeah. Which, if you're homeless, you're probably good, you'll fucking feed me.
Yeah, except for we all know what jails are like now and what they were like back then. I don't know. It's basically like saying, hey, this shitty ass life where you're fucked, we're going to make it equally shitty, but call you a criminal.
How do you realistically enforce that, though? I know they did, but it's just be like, no, I'm not homeless. I'm just on a really long walk.
Fuck, I left my house in my other pants.
Yeah.
That kind of...
You see these suspenders? Would a homeless man have these? Snap.
And which is why Father Dinke attacked him. He's like, you're fucking cheapening the value of my suspenders. So, yeah, they weren't real keen on believing this guy, because that's the fun part when you make homelessness illegal. Then every homeless person is just looked at as a shady criminal. Which I've talked about people...
Society feels that way now.
I know. it's one of my biggest pet peeves. I've talked about, like, around here, there's a lot of homeless. I mean, not a lot comparatively to, like, other places. But there's homeless people, and if you walk along, like, the wooded paths, you can find tents and stuff. And anytime that you talk to anybody about, like, oh yeah, I went jogging on this path, like, the homeless people, they're going to kill you and eat you. It's like, I don't think they will. Like, most of them are, I'm sure there's bad people that are violent and homeless, but there's bad people that are violent and mayors too. So I don't know. It just bugs me that that's the general perception, but that's what was going on at the time. So basically where I'm getting at is they weren't real quick to believe the story that a pillar of their community attacked this guy. However, the man was clearly bleeding from an axe wound in his head, and so they decided that they should probably, at the very least, go talk to Karl Denke. Mm-hmm. And Karl admitted to hitting the man with an axe, but said it was in self-defense after the vagrant attacked him after Karl had given him a handout. So basically his story was, yeah, he attacked me and I hit him with an axe and he ran away. Like, but he, I was trying to be nice and he was trying to come after me. And this was super believable because Denke was very much liked and respected, and vagrants were dirty, rotten criminals. But what is perhaps a first for this podcast, they decided they better take Denke down to the station and hold him overnight while they, like, dotted their I's and crossed their T's and, like, just check the story out in full. Which is fucking shocking to me because that never happens. For his part, Olivier was sentenced to 10 days in jail for being homeless and probably for bleeding all over the police station. They're like, come on, man, we're going to have to clean that up. And that's just fucking nasty. Like, bring that shit in here, you homeless criminal. But Denke was just being held overnight. And though they completely believed his story about self-defense, the second he was left alone in a holding cell, Vader Denke hung himself. Which seems a bit extreme, or perhaps not extreme enough.
Yeah, we could go further.
So, like I said, they were like, at this point, they weren't really like treating him too much like a criminal, but they're like, we need to investigate you a little bit. And he immediately offs himself. And they're like, well, that seems strange. Let's go investigate. So as they would soon discover, in 1903, which would have been, I forget what I said this was, I think 21. So like 18 years prior to this episode, Denke had murdered a woman by the name of Ida Lahner. And then in 1909, he killed a fellow slaughterhouse worker by the name of Emma Sander. But a man by the name of Edward Trotman was tried and found guilty of that murder. Eventually, in light of this new information that they're discovering now in 1921, after he killed himself, he was eventually released after only losing 17 years of his life for the wrongful conviction. So that's fun.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. I mean, everything, but nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So since this homeless Olivier survived his attack, Denke's last victim was a man by the name of Rockus Paulik, who I assume he killed for having such a badass name. Like, that just sounds like an 80s, like, corny action movie, like, played by...
It sounds like to me it sounds like a Disney Channel, like Rockus Pockus. It's like rock and roll magic,
Yeah. So that was Denke's last victim. So it's easy to see why, with the threat of 3 murders looming, Denke would decide to end his life before having to face the consequences of these actions. It's one of these, like, everybody respects me and they're going to find this out.
Well, it's like, joke's on you, dude. No one respected you. You bumbled around with suspenders. Like,
you'd think that was what was going on. However, Denke didn't commit 3 murders. The ledger that the police found, in which Denke detailed his murders, listed 31 names. So, you might be wondering how a prominent, well-liked man that had managed to kill at least 31 people over the span of 21 years without ever even raising any suspicions, like, got away with it.
Almost people?
Yeah, there's a few things at play here. For starters, people liked Denke. We've covered those before. I forget the guy's name. There was that guy I think you covered, maybe I covered, up in Alaska that used to like fly prostitutes out into the middle of the wilderness and hunt them for sport. Mm-hmm. But he owned a shop, so people are like, he couldn't do that. He's a shop owner.
He's a shop.
Like, it doesn't take a whole lot to get people.
You're like, you would have to mount the head on the wall to like give people a bit. Right. Wait.
Which makes me feel really terrible about myself because, like, I'm a small business, not really owner, but I've worked in a small family business for 20 years in a smallish town, and people would immediately be like, "Yep, I can see that." Like, that doesn't surprise.
I would fly into Ohio the moment I heard a murder committed. Like, yes, Your Honor.
I totally believe Steve did that. So I don't get the same kind of leeway, but Denke did. People liked him. And secondly, you said it immediately. All of Denke's victims were like mostly homeless or destitute individuals, and they're the exact kind of victims who don't tend to generate a lot of scrutiny when they go missing. And a lot of it is the shitty system that's prevalent like everywhere through human history and society. Although it is important to remember that all of this occurred just prior to, during, and then after World War I, like almost in the heart of, pressures between like Russia and Germany there. Every time a world war breaks out, both two times. Mm-hmm. But even prior to that and since then, it's an area that has been under a lot of conflict with like being taken over by the Soviet Union and then Germany, then it's an independent, then it's, so there's a lot of people at a lot of points that are just like immigrating and moving around because they want to get the fuck out of there. Mm-hmm.
We just need our suspenders and we need to bounce. Okay.
Bounce. So those two things were at play and that helped him a lot. But thirdly, there weren't any bodies found. So you may be immediately remembering how Denke ran a butcher shop, right?
Yeah. And sold something called pickled pork. Mm-hmm. For some reason, didn't taste at all.
But people liked it.
So aside from the freaks,
aside from the ledger detailing 31 murders, upon investigating Denke's apartment, police found a makeshift meat processing operation, countless human bones and teeth. They also found human skin stretched on drying racks. So guess what? Those wonderful suspenders and belts, also people.
And jars of. I haven't trusted anybody with suspenders ever.
I wear suspenders. Well, you don't trust me.
Yeah, I don't. Thank you. I rest my case.
And of course, jars of pickled meat and a closet full of blood-soaked clothes. So, per Wikipedia, a detailed list of what was found includes 16 femurs with one pair of remarkably strong ones, which is hilarious to me that they noted that.
That guy, a cop, was like,
holy fuck, these are nice femurs.
Damn, can I have these?
I bet I could lift my car with these.
Hey, honey, look at the femurs I got at work.
You know how two of our table legs have been kind of wonky? You'll never guess what I found. 2 pairs of very thin ones. So now they're comparing them.
Now we're critiquing.
And 6 others that were pairs, and 2 left femurs. And so, they're sitting around like, do you think this was 2 different people or 2 people or 1 person with 2 left legs? I don't know. 15 medium-sized pieces of long bone. So I like that they specify, well, this is just a medium piece of a long bone. Yeah. 4 pairs of elbow bones, 7 heads of radii. I was hoping it was 7 heads, but it's 7 heads of radii. So like that ball joint of a bone. 9 lower parts of radii. 8 lower parts of the elbow, a pair of upper shin bone, a pair of lower elbows, radii, blah, 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 collarbones, too. They go through and list exactly what, all these random little pieces, but apparently no heads were found. So I'm very curious what he did with those. Although I imagine in an area that's rife with war, you just could throw bodies in a field and make it look like a mortar shell and be like, hey, oh, that's a war casualty.
Yeah.
They found 120 toes, which is fun. Like,
it's weird. Yeah, it's weird, like the shit you're willing to throw away and the shit you're not.
Yeah,
it's like you're simultaneously a serial killer and a hoarder.
But, and then, yeah, because you like do the math on these, and it's like, well, that's a lot of toes and some femur, but it's still not nearly, it's not like he was keeping a femur from each victim.
At the same time, like, we've done a lot of serial killer stories, and I watched a lot of documentaries, and there is that kind of hoarder mentality now that I think about it, because a lot of killers get caught, and they're like, the apartments are full of trash bags of remains and shit, and some killers don't want to get caught and they'll dispose of shit, but others like have this psychological need to like continue to control who they kill.
And given how he like immediately hung himself as soon as he was arrested, well before he was suspected of anything really, that tells me he's thought about it. Sounds like he knew, like,
this was his plan. Yeah, this was his.
Like I'll do this until it comes. Right. This probably also explains why Denke had refused to leave the apartment in the first place. Like, given that it would be difficult to hide his human meat packing plant, it's hard to move that out of there without suspicion. And it probably even explains like why the new owners were okay letting him keep the apartment, because it had to smell like ass.
It would have been the equivalent of like, well, he's probably running a meth lab in there, but we just hope it won't blow up.
Yeah. So that's the like story of Karl Denke. There's no real like gotcha conclusion to the story, because the gotcha conclusion was Denke's suicide, but that's also the same thing that like started the revelation of what happened. So it's one of those stories where it's like the novels that start with, and John died.
What if like he left a suicide note, but it was just like, wasn't me.
I always knew you guys would suspect it was me, but it's not.
Dear police, I just wanted to see if you would still love me if I was a serial killer. Now that I know the truth, goodbye.
That would be kind of fun if you became one of these serial killers and you knew you're eventually going to get caught, is to have that letter that says something along those lines like, look, I know how guilty I look, and I know that I'm going to end up paying for these crimes, but please don't stop looking for the real killer.
That's so evil. It's like, oh, he totally did it, but there's like one detective who's like, read the letter. No one would ever write this if they were actually guilty.
That's the best way to make sure you get the best shows on like Discovery Channels, because not just the serial killer shows, but you'd get the like conspiracy theorist show. Like you said, there'd be like the Bigfoot hunter type guy that's like,
that's the thing. Like I would just litter that fucking like confession note with like political figures. Just be like, this goes deeper than any of you understand.
Well,
follow the trail.
That's so easy to write off, though, as just like paranoia or schizophrenia. Like, I think I would litter it with just like random, like all of a sudden there's just a symbol that looks like a bunny head, just nonsensical shit but just enough that it's like cryptic.
Like the twig houses from the first season of True Detective. It's just shit, like spray paint a bunch of shit on the wall, and like I would really want it to be elaborate. Like I would want it to be like an 8-year fucking investigation, and then like they enter some tomb where like all this fucking cult shit was supposed to happen, but then just at the end it's like, no, I did it.
Yeah, you had me all along, Dix.
Yeah, there's not more to this.
Send me the bill. Wait, you can't. You already executed me.
Lol.
Lol.
Imagine you open like this really like convoluted, like complicated chess puzzle, and it's like this like puzzle box unfolds, and it's just a note that says "lol."
I've talked about before, like I always like, people want to get rich to be rich because that would be nice, but I just want to have enough money that I could plausibly leave a cryptic note implying that there's a treasure buried somewhere, and somebody would actually believe it. Because if I die and leave that note, nobody's going to fucking believe it. They're like, we know he was poor. You need.
No, go ahead.
you need to be just plausibly rich. Like, you don't have to even be rich, but you have to be in a situation where people think maybe you could have been. And given my profession and like my family, like lineage, nobody's going to mistake me for being secretly wealthy.
Yeah. I was thinking about that though. Like, Elon Musk tweeted out some bullshit about like, I don't try to be liked anymore. And it's like, you try harder than anyone I've ever seen to be liked. Yeah. And everybody's just ripping him an asshole for this because it's just blatantly untrue. And I was thinking about like, if I even had like, you know, a tenth of his wealth, I would not even have to try to be cooler than him. Like it would just, I like these ideas I have, they would happen. And people would be like, he's the fucking, can you believe he led the detectives on that chase?
Well, yeah, but in fairness, we're poor and we're still cooler than everybody is cooler than Elon Musk.
That's what's funny is like, you know, much as higher education doesn't actually make you smart, money doesn't actually make you cool.
Right.
Like, well, and it's like rappers like to, you know, in their songs, they like to flex how much money they have, all this cool shit they have. But what people miss is like the rappers they're fucking cool before they got paid. That's why they got paid.
Right. The money's not what makes them cool. It's what makes them allowed to flaunt it now that they have it.
Yeah. It's like, you know, they're the only people who like have the attitude towards having a lot of money where they will hit you with it to like.
Elon's the guy that you can tell, like, a regular human being you would almost feel sorry for. You can tell he was the kid in school that, like, no matter, like, how hard he tried to be liked, everybody fucking just hated him. And you could tell he realized at an early age that
he's an asshole.
Right. Like, and he's still that kid.
Yeah. He's an asshole with bad ideas and very pushy if you don't do what he wants to do.
Yeah, and then he uses his extreme leverage of his wealth to force his way, and then uses that as like proof that he was right all along until rocket ships blow up and cars catch fire with people locked inside them.
Or
and
somehow
then
he fucking finds a way to like hemorrhage money out of the third
one of the most recognizable brands in the world, right?
Which is like Twitter wasn't doing well before he bought it, but fuck. Like, I could have ran it better.
Yeah.
Like,
well, and in fairness, when you say Twitter wasn't doing well, it wasn't doing well in the stupid-ass corporate sense where it wasn't growing enough, but it wasn't hemorrhaging money.
Yeah, like, I don't lose 10 advertisers every time I tweet. Amazingly. Right. Like,
I know. Well, that's the thing. We probably would, but for very different reasons.
I don't think so. I think Coca-Cola would like to be attached to, like, you know,
your shit post, like your literal shit post.
Laxative tweets. That's that. Right. Laxatives. Miralax. Call me up.
Fuck, at least Charmin, as much as you talk about taking dumps. I mean,
this is a quilted northern house.
Yeah. Well, either one. They've got money and they can share it with us.
Honestly, as long as it's not that one ply shit, like, I'm where the money's at.
I don't know how, but during the pandemic, there was that stuff that came out that was basically like a quarter ply. Like, it was less than a ply.
Yeah.
And
which I don't know. Like, you need like an entire roll's worth, and then you just plug your ass with it.
Right.
And hope for the best. Like, I think that was what it was for. You like plug your ass and like you hibernate. And they were like hoping you would hibernate like a bear through all of COVID.
Right.
That's what they do. Bears like plug their ass with like grass and shit. Like, they intentionally constipate themselves.
I don't know any better. I'm going to choose to believe that.
I think it's true. I saw it on Dr. Dolittle too.
Well, it's got to be true. They wouldn't lie on Dr.
Eddie Murphy talking about it. He wouldn't lie to me.
No, not Eddie Murphy. He's a good guy, I think, or maybe a bad guy, but he would be. Doolittle's a good guy.
Yeah, he helped the animals.
Right. By not doing much, apparently. I don't know. I never watched any of them.
I wonder if animals would be more hateable if you could hear them talk.
I guarantee it.
Like, if you were a vet, would you like be like, God, shut the fuck up? Or would you be like, oh no, their little personalities are even more upfront? And and this one's Norm Macdonald. That would be tough. I couldn't put Norm Macdonald down. McDonald.
Yeah, but imagine like Norm Macdonald dog wanting to jump into your lap. It's like, I don't really want Norm Macdonald in my lap. Like, if you do whatever, that's fine. Yeah, I'm not going to kink shame. But,
did you ever see like the clip from the like Mike Tyson cartoon that was out a few years ago that Norm Macdonald was in as a pigeon?
No, I don't think so. Or if I did, I forgot.
He plays a pigeon, and they're just like he's sitting next to some teenage kid, and he's like, starting to notice the girls, eh? Let me ask you something. You jacking off? Because if you are, it's weird. Nobody does it. You're the only one.
That's the surefire way to make sure your kids turn out wholesome, is to teach them that.
Yeah. Wholesome or fucking insane. Then you got a goddamn dinky-doo situation.
That was the entire problem with Dinky. That's why he ran away from home. They wouldn't let him masturbate.
Yeah, and let him do it in his own space. Like, that's important. That is important to any upbringing. And don't call attention to it. Don't fucking talk about it.
It makes sense. If you don't let him beat his meat, then he becomes a butcher. Like, it's right there. Freud would point it out. Like,
I'm sure there's like that No Nut November shit that morons do. And I guarantee you there's probably an uptick in violent crimes during the month of November. Because you can't. I
don't know. I've always assumed it's a bunch of guys that swear that they made it, but like didn't.
Well, it's a lot of those people who like watch the like bodybuilder freak who just eats raw meat. Have you seen that guy?
I've heard of him. I haven't watched it, but
he's one of the most bizarre. Like somebody pointed out on Twitter, like he's easily the most unhealthy looking person, probably on the entire internet.
Pirates taught us that if you only eat meat, it's a recipe for scurvy. I mean,
well, he's like, yeah, and he's like dumping raw chicken breast in milk and flour and just chewing on it. And like, fuck, I feel sick just thinking about it. Like, and that's, that's your No Nut November, guys. Like,
yeah, which is fun because that's all the same. I don't know. I haven't seen you using Blue Sky too much. I don't know if you just. I still
check it.
You just don't post on it.
I still check it. I don't have. I've said it before. I've posted the funniest fucking thing I've ever posted anywhere on there, and nobody liked it. So I'm gonna be bitter until they have DMs over there, and then I'll switch.
Yeah, that's the thing. But anyway,
once I can tell you the show's uploaded, it'll be all Blue Sky.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing is I'm the opposite. I still check Twitter, but barely say anything on it because every time I do, it's all like political, what to be like upset about now, just terrible stuff. But Twitter's great that's the only time I find out about new video games because my feed, I didn't follow a ton of that stuff anyway, but I see more of it than I went to, like the discourse, I call it, just in general. But it's mostly just like, here's a new trailer for this game. And that stuff I don't, cause I'm not following a bunch of like video game companies on Blue Sky. So I don't get it over there. So it's good for that. But anyway, the reason I brought it up is cause I mentioned, I think yesterday, the stuff I was listening to on Audible, I'd say book, but it's one of those great courses. So they're really lecture series. Cause I'm a huge nerd. Mm-hmm. But I was almost done with it and I had no idea what I wanted to listen to next. And the big one that pops up, and I get these all the time, it's like, oh, recommended for you, Napoleon Hill's Think and Grow Rich, which you know how I feel about that because I covered that eons ago. And it's like, I fucking hate it. But that meat guy, I guarantee it's the Jordan Peterson, that they're all the same fucking thing. And and most of them, if you look at what their influences are, all trace back to Napoleon Hill, which is more reason to fucking hate that guy, even though he's dead. I want him to come back alive and re-kill him.
It's like how the far right like latched onto Ayn Rand, and like she was an idiot for her time,
right?
Like,
and it just it's magnified over the years, but it's also the kind of stuff that it's not because all males like that stuff, but it's because all the people that like this stuff are male. So it gets fucking recommended by like YouTube and Audible, like all these things are like, hey, you're a guy, you probably like this. It's like, no, I'm not a fucking idiot. Like, but it's all Napoleon Hill type shit on Audible, and YouTube was all Jordan Peterson. It took forever for me to get it to, well, I had to explicitly tell it, like, don't recommend me Jordan Peterson. And then it would recommend me people talking about Jordan Peterson. It's like, don't recommend me this person.
How about Jordan Peterson?
And it's fun. But no, I have not watched Raw Meat Guy, but the one that I always see is this guy he's one of these fitness guys that are like, oh, you hear all these like no carb diets or whatever. That's bullshit. I lost 1,000 pounds and became jacked by eating everything I want and donuts and pizza. And I'm like, no, you didn't. Like, it doesn't fucking work that way either.
I mean, there is like, if you're that bodybuilder type, you do have to eat a lot of shit.
Yeah, but
it has to be the right shit. Or you're just going to like collapse.
Yeah, because there's very much a thing as being, what do they call it?
There is such a thing as empty calories. I am full of them.
You can be target weight, like ideal weight or whatever that, and that's all a fucking mess of a term anyway. But you can still be like physically like considered obese, or it's really just malnutrition, like where you look like you're in shape, but like you struggle to get up out of a chair because you're you're eating nothing but shit. Like,
I feel seen right now.
Yeah. I mean, well, me too. I've talked about, I'm at the age where it's like, if I have fast food like 3 times in a week, it's like, I'm worthless. But, I don't know where I'm going with this. It has nothing to do with serial killers.
You know, so what you're saying, I should eat some of Dinky's, pork strips.
Dinky's pickled skinless pork.
Yeah.
Which, in fairness,
if I'm brought to you by pickled pork from Dinky's.
It's something I didn't think about when I was working up the show, but the fact that he specifically advertised it as skinless pickled pork implies that there was a product out there that was skin on pickled pork.
Crispy skinned pickled pork.
Well, that sounds delightful, honestly. That's pickled, like, pig rinds. Yeah, I'll take it. Although I don't know how you'd get them crispy and pickled. Like, they seem counter.
Well, I mean, it takes a good femur.
That's why there was only 2 left out of 31 plus victims.
Hey, we couldn't keep them on the shelf.
I like that his ledger had 31, so he was clearly like keeping track of his murders. But then you'd read stuff that'd be like, people think as many as 40 or as many as 60. It's like, where are you just like guessing? Like,
counting toes. I mean, like, you know, above all else, he seemed like a businessman. He probably kept an adequate inventory of...
I wonder, because it was 31 people logged over 21 years of murders. And in fairness, too, I don't know if he immediately, like his first murder that was logged, did he butcher her, or did that come later? Like, was that well, all these homeless people are going to waste. I might as well...
I don't know. Like, if you think about, like, Sweeney Todd, they just sort of jumped to that idea. She's like, what would work really well? We eat them. It's like, why do you think that?
You need money, and you need to murder because you're a serial killer. You might as well kill 2 birds with one homeless person.
Yeah. I don't, you know, call me a radical. I don't really get cannibalism. Don't see the appeal.
I guess the part I left out, because I must not have put it in my notes. I don't know. Had you heard of Dinky before? You're the bigger serial killer.
Never heard of him.
Yeah. And that's the thing. The Wikipedia says he was basically like quickly forgotten. And I'm like, he fucking sold pickled people. I don't know how he's not one of the more better known serial killers.
I thought you were going to say like the Wikipedia says Ben knows him.
He's related to his. It turns out his relatives became Matlocks and specifically moved to the Western United States.
That would not be. That wouldn't shock me at all. No.
Yeah. but it's weird to me that it's not more well known. And then I thought about it. It was Prussia, it's now Poland area, that kind of area. But if you're those people, and it comes out that one of these, not only somebody that you like held up as a pillar of your community turned out to be a mass serial killer, but that you fucking ate his victims for 20 years, you'd probably be quick to be like, yeah, let's sweep this under the rug. Like, I don't really want to dwell on the facts. Right.
You know, and then, like,
imagine.
And then Frito-Lay comes in and says, we'll keep making them if you can be hush hush.
But you know, there was like a generation of people that were nostalgic for Mom's skinless pickled pork recipes that learned like, fuck, that was people, but I kind of want some.
I need it.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we switched to this other brand, but it's never quite the same.
This other brand. Now 100% not people.
I would they advertise that.
Yeah, like 50%
certifiably
less people.
50% less people, right. So it makes me wonder if there was anybody that went on to kill and pickle people because they just couldn't like live without that flavor.
It couldn't have been that fucking good. Oh man, that's pretty funny.
But
the people who died, pretty funny.
They were homeless. They don't matter, right?
They were delicious.
They were criminals. Vagrancy was a crime.
Look at, yeah. That's right. They were evil, and we made them delicious.
You say serial killer. I say crime fighter.
Yeah. Well, I wonder, like the cops are like, hey, it's a shame.
It's a shame he hung himself.
He did it so much better than we could have.
But fuck, I ate his pickled pork. And then when the news broke, they were like, "Hey, Bill, didn't you used to talk about eating his pickled pork?" Like, no, I never tried.
It's kind of a shame in another sense of just like, if you can make like pickled pork out of people that like the people really enjoy, you're probably on your way to being like a decent chef. You don't need to do that. You could just...
You wonder what his actual pickled pork... Do you think it was that he used mostly pork and it's just every now and then people thought they got a bad batch or a good batch? Like, I don't know.
It was probably... but it was probably cheaper to get people than...
That's true, because you killed them for free.
Yeah. Yeah. It's just being a crafty businessman in a time where...
In the time of need, like he was providing.
Yeah.
And the pickled people part is kind of gross, but the suspenders, nobody really talks about how much he helped Orgendorf or whatever, Monsterville, by providing suspenders. Like, that probably balanced out a little bit.
I'm convinced suspenders, like, initiated, like, 100 years of evil. Because, like, only bad people wore suspenders. Like,
well, especially it's that thing. It's you're already evil, and then you're wearing human suspenders. That there had to be some like possession.
There are people out there who like bought those suspenders and were like, I'm not fucking throwing them out.
And you know what? This was 1920.
My favorite suspenders.
Now I'm curious. It was only 100 years ago. Are there Denke suspenders still out there, like somewhere?
Absolutely. There's got to be. There's like fucking like. Every evil son of a bitch has left some fucking trace that people won't just like burn away. Like Hitler stuff and
yeah.
Like not even Hitler, like it's like just some like dick Nazi soldier. Some asshole will be like, I gotta hang on to the hat.
Right.
It's a dumb hat.
It was Sergeant Dusseldorf's.
Dinkeldorf's.
And you say that's not even conjecture. We know those people are out there because there's some of them are so like non-shamelessly into it that they boast about having this stuff. And it's like, that's great.
Yeah. You look like a dick. Like they looked like dicks back then. Like,
and I'm a history person. Like I'm a big on like, let's not destroy natural history, but natural history is not Nazi paraphernalia.
Well, like,
like
you want to put it in a like fucking museum where not one of those like white nationalist fucking recruitment museums, but if you want to put it up like and tell the whole story of what happened in World War II and all that shit, then go for it. But if you're just like, no, I need it for my collection, I'm gonna assume you're a Nazi then. Like,
right.
Because you're just being fucking weird. Like, you know, again, like, they're not Nazis, but like, if my dad left me some questionable shit, I would destroy it, and he probably will when he dies.
And I know people. There are people that are just that into history that I'm sure there's people that have Nazi stuff. Well, I know there's people that have, like, I think my grandfather had a Nazi gun that was like taken. That was a spoil of war. That wasn't I am like big into Nazis. That was a fuck you.
It's a little different if you have a war trophy.
Yeah, and you were there. But I know that there's people that are just that into history and they're that aloof. They're like, you're not necessarily. But when your entire
just buying
fucking
a Nazi hat off eBay, you fucking weirdo. But
when your entire house, when you have a Nazi room, I'm going to start to question things. Yeah. But
no, I just appreciate the history. It's like, then why are there no allies?
Isn't that the thing? Aren't those people always completely void of allied paraphernalia? It's
like, no, I just love World War II except the part that won.
It's history.
I don't know how we got here, but I'm glad we did. But let's
wrap it up.
Yeah, that's the show.
We've padded the half-hour show into a 50-minute show, so I think we're good.
Yeah, that's the non-essential special. So we'll be back next week with another thing from another place, or it might be the same. I don't know. Tune in. Bye.
Yeah.